The lecture hall buzzed with nervous energy as Professor HFY adjusted the translation matrix for the day's special presentation. 23 alien students from 12 different species sat in carefully arranged seating pods, each designed to accommodate their unique physiologies. Today was different from their usual xenobiology classes. Today, they would be learning from an actual Deathworlder. Marcus Chen checked his breathing apparatus one final time before stepping into the sealed chamber. The human exchange student had volunteered for this demonstration after weeks of his alien classmates expressing bewilderment at some of his casual comments about life on Earth. The atmospheric controls hummed quietly, maintaining the delicate balance needed to keep both the human and his diverse audience comfortable. "Students," Professor HFY announced through the intercom system, "today we welcome Marcus Chen from the Sol system to discuss a concept that has puzzled xenobiologists for decades, the human practice of keeping what they call pets." A ripple of chittering, humming, and various other sounds of interest moved through the assembled students. Tkala, a crystalline being from the Andorian cluster, shifted her faceted form to better focus on the human. Beside her, Gorth, a massive slug-like creature from the heavy world of Nexus Prime, secreted a thin layer of protective mucus in anticipation of what might be a disturbing presentation. Marcus smiled and waved, a gesture that caused several students to recoil slightly. The baring of teeth was considered a threat display among most galactic species. "Hello everyone," he said, his voice carried clearly through the translation system. "I know some of you might find what I'm about to share unusual. But, I promise you, it's completely normal for humans." Professor HFY consulted his notes. "Marcus, perhaps you could begin by defining what humans mean by pets for our students who may be unfamiliar with the concept." "Sure," Marcus replied, settling into the reinforced chair designed to accommodate his dense Deathworlder physique. "A pet is an animal that we keep in our homes or on our property, not for food or work, but purely for companionship and emotional support." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the usual ambient sounds of breathing and biological processes seemed to pause as the implications of his words sank in. Quill, a feathered avian from the peaceful world of Serenity 7, was the first to break the silence. "Forgive me, human Marcus, but did you say you keep predators in your dwellings? Voluntarily?" Marcus laughed, another sound that made several students instinctively move away from the viewing window. "Well, some of them are predators, yes. But they're not dangerous to us. Well, mostly not dangerous. My species has been living alongside these animals for thousands of years. We've formed what we call a symbiotic relationship." "Symbiotic relationship," repeated Dr. Vree, a mantis-like being whose compound eyes were now fully focused on Marcus. "This implies mutual benefit. What benefit do you derive from housing apex predators?" "That's a great question," Marcus said, warming to his subject. "Let me tell you about dogs first. Dogs are probably our oldest and most common pets." He activated his personal data pad, and a holographic image appeared in the center of the lecture hall. The three-dimensional projection showed a large, furry creature with pointed ears, a long tail, and what appeared to be a mouth full of sharp teeth. Gorth immediately began secreting more defensive mucus. "That is clearly a pursuit predator," he gurgled through his translator. "Look at those limbs built for running, those sensory organs positioned for tracking, and those obvious weapons in its mouth." "Weapons?" Marcus looked genuinely confused for a moment before understanding dawned. "Oh, you mean their teeth?" "Yes, dogs do have sharp teeth, but they use them mostly for eating their food and sometimes for play. This particular dog is named Max, and he belongs to my family back on Earth." The image shifted, showing the same creature lying on its back while a small human child rubbed its belly. The dog's tongue was hanging out, and its tail was wagging vigorously. "As you can see," Marcus continued, "Max is completely relaxed around my nephew, who is only 6 years old. Dogs have been bred and evolved alongside humans for so long that they instinctively protect human children. We call them man's best friend." Kala's crystalline form chimed softly, indicating deep thought. The predator is in a submissive position, exposing its vital organs to the young human. This suggests either complete trust or... She paused, "some form of psychological conditioning?" "Trust," Marcus said firmly. dogs form emotional bonds with humans. They experience what we call love, loyalty, and affection. In return, we provide them with food, shelter, medical care, and companionship. The next image showed Marcus himself sitting in what appeared to be a recreational area on Earth. The same dog was pressed against his side, and Marcus was stroking its fur while reading from a datapad. This was taken last year during my final exams, Marcus explained. Max could sense I was stressed, so he came and sat with me for hours while I studied. Animals can often detect human emotions and respond to them. Professor HFY made several notes on his datapad. This is fascinating, Marcus. Could you explain how humans first began this practice? Surely there must have been significant danger involved in attempting to domesticate predatory species? Marcus nodded enthusiastically. Archaeological evidence suggests that the relationship between humans and dogs began over 15,000 years ago. Early humans would share food scraps with wild wolves that hung around their camps. Over generations, the wolves that were less aggressive and more comfortable around humans had better access to food and were more likely to survive and reproduce. Artificial selection, murmured Dr. Vrie. You bred them for docility. Partially, yes, but it was more complex than that. We also bred them for specific traits that were useful to us. Some dogs were bred to help us hunt, others to guard our homes or livestock, and others simply to be companions. The holographic display changed again, showing a bewildering variety of dog breeds. There were tiny creatures that looked like they could fit in a human hand, massive beasts that appeared larger than some of the alien students, dogs with long fur, short fur, no fur at all, and everything in between. These are all the same species? Asked Quill, her feathers ruffling with confusion. Genetically, yes. All dogs are descendants of wolves, but thousands of years of selective breeding have created hundreds of different breeds with different temperaments and abilities. A student named Blorg, who resembled a cross between an octopus and a tree, extended several tentacles toward the display. The variation is extraordinary. But, human Marcus, you mentioned that dogs were not the only creatures you keep as pets? Marcus grinned. Oh no, dogs are just the beginning. We also keep cats. The new holographic image made several students actually leave their seats. The creature on display was clearly built for stealth and killing. Its retractable claws, forward-facing eyes, and lithe, muscular build screamed apex predator to every survival instinct the alien students possessed. This is Luna, Marcus said fondly, seemingly oblivious to the terror he was causing. She's a domestic cat, and she lives with my sister's family. The image showed the cat sitting regally on what appeared to be a piece of human furniture, staring directly at the camera with bright green eyes that seemed to look right through the viewing students. Cats, Marcus continued, are a bit different from dogs. They were originally attracted to human settlements because we stored grain, which attracted rodents, which the cats hunted. But, unlike dogs, cats domesticated themselves. They chose to live with us. They chose? Kala's form chimed with what sounded like disbelief. Cats are much more independent than dogs. They don't need as much attention or care, and they maintain many of their wild instincts. But, they also form strong bonds with their human families. The image changed to show the same cat curled up sleeping on a human's lap while the person worked on a computer. The cat's powerful predatory frame was relaxed completely, and a soft rumbling sound could be heard through the audio system. That sound, Gorth gurgled nervously, is that some form of threat display? That's purring, Marcus explained. It's how cats express contentment and affection. Luna is completely relaxed and happy in this image. Professor HFY was taking rapid notes. Marcus, I must ask, have there never been incidents? Surely these predators must occasionally revert to their natural instincts? Marcus considered this seriously. Well, accidents can happen, especially with young animals that are still learning. And cats do sometimes bring us gifts of small animals they've hunted. But serious injuries from pets are extremely rare among humans. Why? Asked Dr. Vrie bluntly. What prevents these creatures from simply killing and eating you? A few reasons, Marcus replied. First, we provide them with regular, high-quality food, so they have no need to hunt us. Second, thousands of years of breeding have selected for animals that are naturally inclined to be peaceful around humans. And, third, we socialize them from birth to understand that humans are not prey. But, humans are prey, protested Quill. You're soft, relatively slow, and lack natural weapons. By all logic, you should be food to such creatures. Marcus laughed again. I think you're underestimating humans a bit. We might not look dangerous, but we're persistence hunters who evolved to chase down much larger prey over long distances. We're also incredibly social and use tools and weapons. Most animals instinctively recognize that humans are not easy prey. The holographic display shifted to show a video of Marcus playing with both Max the dog and Luna the cat in what appeared to be a garden area. The three of them were engaged in what looked like some form of chase game, with Marcus throwing objects for the animals to retrieve or pounce on. This is called playing, Marcus explained. It's how we bond with our pets and provide them with mental and physical stimulation. Play behavior is actually crucial for the psychological health of both humans and our companion animals. Blorg's tentacles writhed with what his species expressed as curiosity. You mentioned that this provides benefits to humans as well. Could you elaborate on these benefits? Absolutely, Marcus said, his enthusiasm growing. Studies have shown that pet ownership reduces stress, lowers blood pressure, and can help with depression and anxiety. Pets provide unconditional companionship and emotional support. They also encourage physical activity and can help with social interaction when you meet other pet owners. Physical activity? Kala chimed. Dogs need regular exercise, so their owners must walk them daily. This ensures humans get exercise too. Cats are less demanding, but playing with them and maintaining their environment also requires physical activity. The display now showed Marcus walking along a path with Max on a leash, the dog trotting happily beside him while other humans with their own dogs passed by in the distance. And the social benefits, prompted Professor HFY. Pet ownership creates an instant connection between humans, Marcus explained. When you're walking your dog, other dog owners will often stop to talk. Dogs love meeting new people and other dogs, so they facilitate social interactions. As if to demonstrate his point, the video showed Max approaching another dog walker, and soon Marcus was engaged in a friendly conversation with a stranger while their dogs sniffed and played together. This is remarkable, Dr. Vri observed. You've essentially created a system where potentially dangerous predators serve multiple functions: companionship, exercise motivation, stress relief, and social facilitation. Exactly. Marcus beamed. But dogs and cats aren't our only pets. Humans keep an incredible variety of animals. What followed was a parade of images that left the alien students increasingly bewildered. Marcus showed them birds of prey that lived in human homes, large reptiles that could easily crush a human, fish kept in glass containers for purely aesthetic purposes, and small mammals that seemed to exist solely to be cute and fuzzy. Humans keep predatory birds in their dwellings, gasped Quill, staring at an image of a large parrot perched on Marcus's shoulder. Parrots are actually omnivores, Marcus corrected. But, yes, some humans do keep birds of prey as pets, though it requires special training and licensing. This is Cisco, my aunt's African gray parrot. He's incredibly intelligent and can learn to speak human languages. It can communicate? Kala's crystalline form practically vibrated with interest. To some extent, yes. Cisco has a vocabulary of over 200 words and can use them contextually. He understands concepts like colors, numbers, and shapes. Some parrots have been known to hold simple conversations. The next image showed a massive snake coiled around a human's arms and shoulders. Several students made sounds of alarm. This is Python Pete, Marcus said casually. He belongs to one of my professors back on Earth. He's about 12 feet long and weighs around 40 pounds. Completely harmless to humans, despite being a constrictor. Harmless? Gortha's mucus secretion had reached levels that were starting to concern Professor HFY. That creature could easily crush a human. Technically, yes, Marcus admitted. But Pete has been raised around humans since he hatched. He recognizes humans as non-threatening companions, not prey or threats. Plus, pythons are actually quite docile by nature. The presentation continued with increasingly bizarre examples. Humans who kept large lizards that could deliver venomous bites, tiny mammals that were essentially living stress balls, and fish tanks that required complex ecological management. The variety is overwhelming, Professor HFY noted. Are there any limits to what humans will attempt to keep as pets? Marcus thought about this carefully. Well, we do have laws in most places about keeping certain dangerous or endangered animals. And responsible pet ownership means considering whether you can properly care for an animal's needs. But humans have successfully kept everything from insects to elephants as companions at various points in history. Elephants squeaked a small, rodent-like student named Pip. Elephants are highly intelligent and social creatures, Marcus explained. In some cultures, they've been working partners and companions for thousands of years. Though they're not really pets in the traditional sense due to their size and needs. Dr. Vree leaned forward in his pod. Marcus, I'm beginning to understand the scope of this phenomenon, but I still don't comprehend the underlying motivation. Humans are clearly intelligent enough to recognize the risks involved in these relationships. Why do you persist in this behavior? Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering how to explain something that seemed so natural to him but was clearly alien to his audience. I think it comes down to empathy and connection, he said finally. Humans are deeply social creatures, and we have an instinctive need to form bonds with other living beings. We can recognize intelligence, emotion, and personality in animals, and they seem to recognize the same in us. He brought up one final image, a photo of himself as a child, no more than 5 years old, asleep in a large chair with Max curled up beside him. This picture was taken 10 years ago, Marcus said softly. I was sick with a fever, and Max refused to leave my side for 3 days. He somehow knew I needed him. That's not unusual. There are countless stories of pets alerting families to fires, protecting children from danger, or providing comfort during difficult times. The lecture hall was completely silent now, even Gortha's nervous mucus secretion had slowed. But, perhaps most importantly, Marcus continued, caring for animals teaches us important values: responsibility, empathy, patience, and unconditional love. Children who grow up with pets often develop stronger emotional intelligence and better social skills. Kala's crystalline form chimed thoughtfully. So these relationships serve an educational function as well? In many ways, yes. Pets teach us about life cycles, responsibility, and caring for something other than ourselves. They also provide emotional support during difficult times and celebrate with us during good times. Professor HFY made a final note on his datapad. This has been truly enlightening, Marcus. Before we conclude, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our students? Marcus looked around at the assembled alien faces, each showing varying degrees of fascination and bewilderment. I suppose I'd like you to understand that while this might seem strange or dangerous from your perspectives, for humans, pets are family members. They're not possessions or tools, they're companions who share our lives and our homes. The bond between humans and animals is one of the oldest and most important relationships in our species' history. He paused, then smiled that tooth-bearing expression that had initially alarmed his audience. And, honestly, they make life a lot more fun. As the presentation ended and Marcus was escorted back to his quarters, the alien students sat in stunned silence, each trying to process what they had just learned about the Deathworlders from Sol 3. The humans, it seemed, were far stranger than anyone had imagined. 3 weeks after Marcus Chen's presentation, the Xenobiology department at Galactic University was buzzing with unusual activity. What had begun as a simple educational session about human pet keeping had evolved into the most requested research project in the university's history. Professor HFY found himself overwhelmed with requests from students across multiple disciplines who wanted to study this bizarre human behavior more deeply. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by scientific curiosity and, in some cases, what could only be described as fascination. Kala had been the first to formally request an independent study on the subject. Her crystalline form chimed with excitement as she presented her preliminary research to a gathering of interested faculty and students in Conference Room 7 Alpha. My initial analysis of available data suggests that human pet keeping represents a unique evolutionary adaptation, she announced, her faceted body catching and refracting the room's bioluminescent lighting. No other sapient species in our galactic database maintains voluntary proximity to potential predators for purely emotional purposes. Dr. Vri, who had attended as both faculty advisor and genuinely curious observer, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Kala, have you considered that this behavior might represent some form of collective madness? A species-wide psychological aberration? That was my initial hypothesis, Kala admitted, but the more I research, the more I believe this represents sophisticated behavioral evolution. Consider the benefits human Marcus described: stress reduction, social facilitation, emotional support, and enhanced physical activity. These advantages could provide significant survival benefits for a social species. Quill ruffled her iridescent feathers nervously. But surely the risks outweigh any potential benefits? I've been reviewing Earth's historical records, and there are documented cases of pet animals harming humans. The statistics are fascinating, Kala chimed, calling up a holographic display of data. According to Earth databases, humans are statistically more likely to be injured by their own furniture than by their pets. The risk assessment capabilities of humans appear to be far more sophisticated than we initially assumed. Gorth, who had been unusually quiet since Marcus's presentation, finally spoke up, his voice gurgling through layers of protective mucus. I have been conducting my own research into this phenomenon, he announced, surprising everyone present. You have? Professor HFY asked, his eye stalks swiveling toward the massive slug-like being. Yes. I have been analyzing human biochemical data related to pet interactions. The results are unprecedented. Gorth activated his own data display, showing complex molecular diagrams that meant little to most of the assembled beings but caused Dr. Vri to lean forward with interest. Human brain chemistry undergoes measurable changes during positive interactions with their pets, Gorth continued. Levels of oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin increase significantly, while cortisol and other stress hormones decrease. The physiological effects are substantial enough to impact overall health and longevity. Are you suggesting that humans have evolved a biochemical dependency on these creatures? Dr. Vri asked. Not dependency, exactly, Gorth replied carefully. More like optimization. Humans who maintain these relationships show improved immune function, better cardiovascular health, and enhanced psychological resilience. Blorg, the tree octopus hybrid, extended several tentacles toward the data display. This biochemical response pattern, do the animals experience similar changes? According to the limited data available, yes, Gorth confirmed. The physiological benefits appear to be mutual. Both species benefit from the interaction at a fundamental biological level. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Professor HFY was the first to speak. You're suggesting that humans have created a genuine symbiotic relationship with multiple non-sapient species. Not just coexistence, but actual biological interdependence for optimal health and well-being. That appears to be correct, Kala chimed. But it goes beyond simple symbiosis. The relationship includes complex emotional and social components that we're only beginning to understand. Dr. Vri stood and began pacing, his compound eyes processing the information from multiple angles simultaneously. If this is accurate, then humans represent something unprecedented in our understanding of sapient evolution. They've essentially domesticated themselves along with their companion species. What do you mean? Asked Pip, the small rodent-like student who had been quietly taking notes throughout the discussion. Consider the implications, Dr. Vri explained. Humans have modified their living environments, daily routines, social structures, and even their biochemistry to accommodate these relationships. They've adapted their behavior as much as they've adapted the animal's behavior. Quill's feathers rustled with concern. But this still doesn't address the fundamental question: how did they overcome their survival instincts sufficiently to begin these relationships in the first place? This question had been bothering several of the researchers. Kala had been developing a theory, but she wasn't sure the other students were ready to hear it. I believe, she said carefully, that we may be fundamentally misunderstanding human survival instincts. How so? Professor HFY prompted. We've been operating under the assumption that humans are typical prey species who somehow overcame their fear of predators. But what if that's wrong? What if humans are apex predators who simply don't perceive these animals as threats? The silence that followed was profound. Every being in the room was reassessing everything they thought they knew about the Deathworlders from Soul 3. Gorth was the first to respond, his mucus secretion increasing noticeably. You're suggesting that humans maintain these relationships because they're confident in their ability to dominate these creatures if necessary? Not dominate, Kala corrected quickly. But perhaps humans instinctively understand that they're not in danger from these animals. Their confidence in these relationships might stem from an unconscious recognition of their own capabilities. Dr. Vria's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this theory. This would explain the apparent casualness with which humans approach potentially dangerous animals. They're not overcoming fear, they're operating from a position of strength. But that raises even more questions, Blorg interjected, his tentacles writhing with agitation. If humans are apex predators, why do they need these relationships at all? What evolutionary pressure would drive them toward emotional bonds with other species? Kala had been wondering about this herself. I think the answer lies in human social evolution. Humans are pack hunters who evolved in small tribal groups. They're genetically programmed for complex social relationships and emotional bonds. You're suggesting they've simply expanded their pack instincts to include other species? Professor HFY asked. Exactly. Humans may be the first sapient species to evolve such strong social bonding instincts that they've extended them beyond their own species' boundaries. Quill shifted nervously on her perch. This theory paints humans as even more alien than we initially thought. A species of social apex predators who form emotional bonds with potential prey animals? It does sound rather unsettling when you put it like that, admitted Pip. Professor HFY consulted his notes from the original presentation. Marcus did mention that humans recognize intelligence and emotion in animals, and that animals seem to recognize the same in humans. Perhaps we're dealing with a form of interspecies communication that we don't fully understand. This triggered another line of inquiry that had been developing among the research group. A new voice spoke up from the back of the room. Actually, I think I might have some insights into that. Everyone turned to see ZYX, an energy-based being from the plasma fields of Vortex Prime. ZYX rarely participated in biological discussions, as their species had evolved beyond physical form millennia ago. Please, share your thoughts, Professor HFY encouraged. ZYX's form shimmered as they gathered their thoughts. In my research into human-animal communication, I've discovered that humans use an incredibly complex system of nonverbal signals to interact with their pets. Facial expressions, body language, vocal tones, and even electromagnetic field variations. Electromagnetic fields? Dr. Vri asked with interest. Humans generate subtle bioelectric fields that vary with emotional state. Many Earth animals are sensitive to these fields and can interpret them as emotional communication. Similarly, humans appear to unconsciously read the bioelectric patterns of their companion animals. Gortha's form trembled with excitement, causing small waves in his protective mucus. This suggests a level of interspecies empathy that we previously thought impossible. But it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint, Kala chimed. If humans are pack hunters who needed to coordinate with others for survival, they would have evolved sophisticated empathy and communication skills. Extending these skills to other species would be a natural development. There's another element to consider, ZYX continued. Human pets appear to undergo personality changes when living with humans. They become more social, more communicative, and often more intelligent than their wild counterparts. Artificial selection for intelligence and sociability, Dr. Vri mused. Over thousands of generations, humans have been breeding these animals to be better companions. Which means, Professor HFY realized, that current human pets are quite different from their wild ancestors. They've been specifically evolved to form bonds with humans. This revelation cast the entire phenomenon in a new light. The relationships between humans and their pets weren't just unusual, they represented thousands of years of collaborative evolution between different species. "I think we need to request another session with Marcus," Kala suggested. "There are so many questions that have emerged from our research." "Agreed," Professor Zexai said. "But I think we should also invite some of his fellow humans to participate. Understanding this phenomenon may require multiple perspectives." As the meeting concluded and the various beings dispersed to continue their research, none of them noticed the small recording device that had been discreetly placed in the conference room. Nor did they realize that their discussion was being monitored by Marcus Chan, who had been asked by the university's Xenocultural department to observe the aliens' reactions to his presentation. Marcus sat in his quarters, reviewing the recording with a mixture of amusement and concern. The alien students were taking his presentation far more seriously than he had anticipated, and some of their theories about human nature were uncomfortably accurate. He made a note to himself to contact his cultural liaison officer. The next presentation was going to require careful preparation. The aliens were asking questions that touched on some rather sensitive aspects of human psychology and evolution. But, as he watched Kala's enthusiastic analysis of human pet biochemistry, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Perhaps the greatest surprise in this exchange was not how strange humans seemed to aliens, but how perceptive aliens could be about human nature. His data pad chimed with an incoming message. Professor Zexai was formally requesting a follow-up presentation, this time with additional human participants and a focus on the evolutionary and psychological aspects of pet keeping. Marcus leaned back in his chair and considered his options. He could keep the presentation simple and avoid the more complex implications of human behavior. Or he could give the alien students what they really wanted, a deeper understanding of what made humans tick. He looked at the photos on his desk, images of Max, Luna, and his various family members' pets. These relationships were such a fundamental part of human life that he had never really questioned them before. But the aliens' questions were forcing him to examine his own species from an outside perspective. The next presentation was going to be interesting indeed. Meanwhile, in her private research pod, Kala was accessing restricted databases and compiling a comprehensive analysis of human behavior patterns. What had started as curiosity about pet keeping had evolved into something much more significant. She was beginning to understand that humans were not just another sapient species with unusual habits. They were something entirely new in the galaxy, a species that had evolved beyond the traditional predator-prey relationships that governed most life forms. And, if her theories were correct, this made humans either the most fascinating species in the known galaxy, or potentially the most dangerous. The research was far from over. The revelation 2 months had passed since the initial presentation, and the conference hall was packed beyond capacity. Word of the human pet research had spread throughout Galactic University, attracting attention from departments that had never shown interest in xenobiology before. Military strategists, evolutionary psychologists, and even some representatives from the Galactic Council had requested access to the proceedings. Marcus Chan stood at the podium, but this time he wasn't alone. 3 other humans had agreed to participate in what Professor Zexai was calling the Human Companion Animal Symposium. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a xenopsychologist specializing in interspecies communication, Lieutenant Commander James Park, a military liaison officer, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, a cultural anthropologist who studied human-animal relationships. The alien audience was notably different from the original class of 23 students. Kala had been promoted to research assistant and was now helping coordinate the event. Gorth had attracted attention from several medical research institutions for his biochemical analysis. Even Quill, despite her nervous disposition, had produced a fascinating study on the parallels between human pet keeping and certain extinct galactic civilizations. Professor Zexai called the session to order, his eye stalks surveying the packed amphitheater. "Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that this research has taken an unexpected turn. What began as a simple educational presentation has evolved into one of the most significant xenocultural studies in recent history. He gestured toward a massive holographic display that showed a three-dimensional map of known galactic civilizations. Our preliminary findings suggest that humans represent something unique among sapient species. Dr. Martinez, would you care to elaborate? Dr. Martinez stepped forward, her movements causing several alien observers to shift nervously. Even after months of study, many species still found human body language unsettling. Thank you, Professor. Over the past several weeks, my colleagues and I have been analyzing the data your students collected, and we've reached some startling conclusions about the nature of human-animal relationships. She activated a holographic display showing brain scans and biochemical data. What your students identified as unusual biochemical responses to animal interaction are actually fundamental aspects of human psychology. Humans are neurologically wired to form emotional bonds not just with our own species, but with any creature we perceive as having consciousness or personality. Dr. Vri leaned forward in his observation pod. You're confirming Tala's theory about extended pack bonding? It's more complex than that, Dr. Martinez replied. Human empathy operates on multiple levels simultaneously. We have cognitive empathy, the ability to understand another being's mental state. We have affective empathy, the ability to share another being's emotions. And we have something called compassionate empathy, the drive to help other beings in distress. This applies to non-human animals as well, asked ZYX, their energy form shimmering with interest. Absolutely. Humans routinely risk their own safety to rescue animals they've never seen before. We have documented cases of humans entering burning buildings to save pets, diving into dangerous waters to rescue stranded animals, and even sacrificing their own lives to protect creatures that provide them no direct benefit. The audience stirred uneasily. This level of interspecies altruism was unprecedented in galactic civilization. Lieutenant Commander Park stepped forward. I think it's important to address the elephant in the room, he said, using an idiom that required extensive translation matrix work. Many of you have been wondering about the military implications of human bonding behavior. Several military observers in the audience leaned forward with obvious interest. The truth is, human military effectiveness is actually enhanced by our bonding capabilities. Throughout our history, we've used animals as partners in warfare, exploration, and rescue operations. Dogs, horses, dolphins, and even pigeons have served alongside human military units. He activated a new display showing various animals working with human military personnel. These aren't just tools or resources. They're partners, teammates, and, in many cases, family members. This creates a level of trust and coordination that purely technological solutions can't match. Gortha's form trembled as he processed this information. You're saying that humans can form tactical partnerships with non-sapient species? Routinely, Park confirmed. And not just in military contexts. Humans work with animals in law enforcement, search and rescue, medical assistance, agriculture, transportation, and dozens of other fields. The key is that humans treat these animals as individuals with their own personalities, preferences, and capabilities. Dr. Vasquez, the cultural anthropologist, moved to the center of the presentation area. This brings us to perhaps the most significant finding of our research. Human civilization is not just a human achievement, it's a multi-species collaboration that's been ongoing for thousands of years. She brought up a timeline showing human technological and social development alongside the domestication of various animal species. Every major advance in human civilization has been accompanied by developments in human-animal relationships. Agriculture succeeded because humans partnered with animals for labor and food production. Exploration succeeded because humans traveled with animals that could survive in different environments. Even our transition to space travel included plans for bringing animals with us. Kala's crystalline form chimed with realization. You're suggesting that human civilization is actually a multi-species civilization? That's exactly what we're suggesting, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. Humans have never lived in isolation from other species. Our entire evolutionary and cultural development has been shaped by our relationships with animals. Professor ZXI was taking rapid notes, his eye stalks moving independently as he tried to process multiple data streams simultaneously. This has profound implications for our understanding of human capabilities and intentions.
Indeed it does, Dr. Martinez agreed.
And it brings us to the most important part of today's presentation.
Marcus, would you care to explain what happened when humans left Earth?
Marcus stepped forward, and, for the first time since the presentations began, he looked genuinely emotional.
When humans began establishing colonies on other worlds, we didn't go alone.
We brought our companion animals with us. Every human colony ship included specially designed habitats for dogs, cats, horses, and dozens of other species. The display showed images of massive colony ships with clearly visible animal habitation modules. But, more importantly, when we encountered our first alien species, the peaceful traders from Alpha Centauri, our first diplomatic gift wasn't technology or resources. It was a breeding pair of golden retriever puppies. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. The Centaurians were initially confused by the gesture. But, when they observed how the puppies behaved around human children, protecting them, comforting them, playing with them, they began to understand something fundamental about human nature. Marcus paused, looking around the amphitheater at the assembled alien faces.
Humans don't just form alliances or partnerships.
We invite other species into our families. When humans say we come in peace, we mean it literally. We're a species that has spent thousands of years learning to live in harmony with creatures that could easily kill us. Dr. Vria's mandibles clicked rapidly.
You're suggesting that human diplomatic behavior with alien species follows the same patterns as your relationships with animals?
Not suggesting, Lieutenant Commander Park said firmly.
Confirming.
Human first contact protocols are based on the same principles we use when introducing our children to new pets: patience, respect, clear communication of peaceful intentions, and gradual building of trust.
The implications were staggering.
The alien observers began to understand that they had been witnessing not just an academic presentation about strange human behavior, but a demonstration of how humans approached all interspecies relationships. Blorg extended several tentacles toward the presenting humans.
This explains the unusual protocols humans follow in galactic diplomacy. You treat other sapient species the same way you treat your companion animals?
In many ways, yes, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. Though obviously we recognize the intelligence and autonomy of other sapient species, the underlying psychological approaches are similar: empathy, patience, respect for individual personalities, and the assumption that cooperation is possible. Quill's feathers were standing on end with what appeared to be a mixture of amazement and concern. But this suggests that humans view other species, including us, as potential friends, Marcus said simply. Humans view other species as potential friends, companions, allies, and family members.
It's not that we don't recognize danger or threat, we do.
But our default assumption is that peaceful coexistence and mutual benefit are possible with any species willing to try.
Professor HFY set down his datapad and addressed the humans directly. This research has been enlightening, but I must ask, are humans aware that this approach is unique among galactic civilizations?
Most species view interspecies relationships in terms of competition, exploitation, or simple coexistence.
Dr. Martinez nodded.
We're beginning to understand that human assumptions about normal behavior don't apply to most other species.
But here's what you need to understand: humans can't easily change this behavior. It's not just cultural, it's neurological and evolutionary.
What do you mean? Asked ZYX. Human brains are literally structured to form emotional bonds with other conscious beings, Dr. Martinez explained. We can't simply decide to stop caring about other species any more than you could decide to stop breathing.
It's fundamental to what we are. Lieutenant Commander Park added, this is why human military doctrine emphasizes defensive strategies and alliance building rather than conquest.
It's not just ethics, though that's part of it. It's because humans are psychologically predisposed to see other species as potential partners rather than enemies. The session continued for several more hours, with alien researchers asking increasingly detailed questions about human psychology, evolution, and interspecies relationships. But, as the formal presentation concluded, a smaller group remained for what Professor Zexhai had designated as informal discussion.
Kala approached Marcus during the break period.
Human Marcus, I must ask you something that has been troubling me throughout this research.
Of course, what is it?
If humans are capable of forming these deep emotional bonds with non-sapient animals, and if you extend the same approach to sapient aliens, how do you cope with the knowledge that not all species share this capacity?
How do you deal with species that might view human empathy as weakness?
Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer carefully.
That's probably the hardest part of galactic diplomacy for humans, he admitted. We know that not everyone thinks the way we do.
But, we've learned that our approach has some unexpected advantages.
Such as?
Species that initially view human empathy as weakness often discover that it's actually a form of strength. When humans commit to protecting or helping another species, we're incredibly difficult to defeat or discourage. Our bonds with our allies are so strong that we'll endure enormous sacrifices to maintain them. Dr. Vri, who had been listening to the conversation, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully.
You're suggesting that human emotional bonding creates military and diplomatic advantages?
Absolutely, Lieutenant Commander Park interjected. Human military units with strong emotional bonds fight harder, endure more hardship, and refuse to abandon each other under circumstances that would cause other species to retreat or surrender. And, diplomatically, Dr. Vasquez added, humans are willing to invest enormous resources in maintaining relationships with allied species, even when the short-term costs seem excessive. This creates a level of trust and reliability that many species find valuable. Gorth, who had been unusually quiet during the discussion, finally spoke up. There is something else I have discovered in my biochemical research that I have not yet shared. Everyone turned to the massive slug-like being. Human biochemistry during bonding interactions releases compounds that are, contagious is not the right word, transmissible through airborne pheromones. Other species exposed to humans during positive emotional states experience their own neurochemical responses.
You're saying humans can literally spread emotional states to other species?
Dr. Martinez asked with surprise.
In a limited sense, yes.
The effect varies by species, but many beings find human presence during positive emotional states to be physiologically pleasant, even addictive. This revelation caused a stir among the remaining observers. The implications were significant for interspecies diplomacy and cultural exchange.
This might explain, Kala chimed thoughtfully, why so many species find human cultural exports appealing despite their alien origins.
Cultural exports?
Marcus asked.
Human entertainment, art, music, and literature have become surprisingly popular throughout the galaxy, Professor Zexhai explained. Many beings find human emotional expression compelling, even when the content itself is completely foreign to their experience.
Dr. Vasquez smiled. So humans are not just forming bonds with individual aliens, but influencing alien cultures through our emotional expression?
It appears so, Gorth confirmed. Though the extent and implications of this phenomenon require much more research. As the evening progressed and the various beings prepared to return to their quarters, Marcus found himself reflecting on how much his simple presentation about pets had evolved into a comprehensive analysis of human nature. But, perhaps the most significant moment came as Tala was preparing to leave. Human Marcus, she chimed softly, I have one final question.
Yes? Given everything we have learned about human psychology and behavior, would you consider, that is, would it be possible for a human to form one of these emotional bonds with a non-biological being? With a crystalline entity like myself?
Marcus looked at her carefully, seeing past the alien form to the curious, intelligent individual underneath. Kala, he said gently, I think that friendship is exactly what we've been building over these past few months. Her crystalline form chimed with what could only be described as joy, a sound that resonated through the nearly empty conference hall. As Marcus walked back to his quarters, he realized that the alien's research into human pet keeping had revealed something profound about both species. Humans might be unique in their capacity for interspecies bonding, but they weren't alone in their desire for connection and understanding. The galaxy, it seemed, was full of potential friends. And, for a human, that was the most encouraging discovery of all.